Hello, and thank you very much for tuning in to the podcast series by the New Silk Road Project. I'm your host today, Charles Stevens, the founder of the New Silk Road Project. This series is dedicated to understanding and raising awareness of one of the most important development strategies of the 21st century, China's Belt and Road Initiative. The centerpiece of the New Silk Road Project, an initiative supported by Jeep, CSIS, Magellan Capital, the University of St Andrews and Shira, was to travel the course of the Silk Road economic belt from London to Yiwu in eastern China, interviewing the key actors and academics along its course. We will have to apologise in advance for some of the tangential moments in this podcast series, and also the variable quality of audio footage. We do hope this series sheds important light into China's growing global presence and the significant changes taking place across Eurasia. About 30 days into our 64-day journey, we had the opportunity to sit down with the CEO of Anaklia Development Consortium, the overall developers of one of Georgia's flagship projects, Anaklia Deep Sea Port and Special Economic Zone. This hub is trying to make Georgia a key node in the expanding networks across Eurasia. It is also a project which AIIB, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, is involved in developing, and in this way is very much linked to the Belt and Road Initiative.
Thank you for the opportunity to give you a bit more details about our project, and thank you for the interview. My name is Levan Akhvlediani. I am the CEO of Anaklia Development Consortium. I've been with the project from day one. My background is, I've finished my bachelor's degree in the United States in GW. Then I've been since graduating, I've been in a number of, industries. I started out with the commodity trading, then I moved into more development. I moved back to Georgia in 2007. And I've been pretty much with the Tbilisi group, which is one of the founding members of our consortium, since then. So I've been in different fields because we are kind of a group of affiliated companies that share many, shareholders at the top, but we are in different industries, and I've been in construction and development, and since end of 2013, when the idea of Anaklia came about, I joined this project, and I've been here ever since. Actually, Anaklia is not a new idea. It's been around for a long time. It's been here for over 40 years. I think in the first project we've looked in the archives, and the first project we found was dated back to 1974, and there have been a number of iterations after that. There was one in 94, there was one in 2000, there was one in 2009 or 8, and then there was this last one that we're. So there have been a number of attempts to actually do this project, and since 2013 I've had the pleasure to lead this project on a day-to-day basis and bring it to where we are today.
And of course, the role of Georgia as a historical trading route goes back much before that. Are you happy to discuss a little bit about this and where it sat in sort of Eurasian connectivity and global trade?
Of course. I think Georgia's function as a transit, country, as a place of trade has always been an important part of our history. We were part of one of the players in ancient Silk Road as well. And I think we've always brought countries together and connected them. I think one of the very good example of that is the first the telegraph wire done by Siemens. I don't know whether you know this, but Siemens brothers used to live here in Tbilisi. Actually, their regional headquarters used to be here. And the first telegraph connecting London to Mumbai was actually going through Tbilisi. So there's actually a map that we can show you later that actually depicts that. So our function as a transit country has always been there, and I think it is, one of the functions and economic drivers that we would like, as a country, I think we would like to take utmost advantage of.
And as a future logistics hub, you're probably looking at other more established global players such as Rotterdam and Singapore. Have you had a particular focus at any example, and what inspiration have you taken?
Well, let's say our vision in terms of this project is very broad. Actually, we have two projects within our, let's say, our company. That is, one is the port, the deep sea port that we're constructing, and another one is the special economic zone and the city behind it. So we've done extensive research actually on both projects, and of course the first one was the main one was the port, because that was kind of the economic locomotive that would drive everything else. So of course immediately we saw the potential of that, and that's why we pursued this project and the tender which the government announced back in 2014. And then out of that actually was a spin-off of the special economic zone and the city, which we envisage as a logistics hub, as a industrial hub, focusing on different types of industries. In a more, let's say, initial phases, we would more focus on logistics, let's say warehousing and some value-added light manufacturing industry type of activities. And in the long run, we also look at possibilities of, let's say, attracting other players in other sectors like financial, education, healthcare, and so forth. So the vision is broad, and as part of this vision and realization of this vision, of course, our team had done extensive, let's say, traveling around the world, looking at successful examples. One being Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai, and many others actually. And we are trying to draw best practices out of these examples and incorporate them here in Anaklia in order to give way to and I think Georgia is the ideal place for such a regional hub. And basically we want to create the zone in which we can incorporate all of these best practices and attract, let's say, make a zone which will, for the regional players, make like an international hub for doing their business and actually connecting to the wider world. So because like every other, let's say, hub, like you mentioned Singapore and Hong Kong and the others, the main function they serve is connecting people. So in order to do that, we need, of course, not only just physical infrastructure, but the soft infrastructure and the legal infrastructure. So all of these directions are being pursued by our team at the moment. And to tell you even a bit more details of what we are doing is that, for example, the government of Georgia already included Anaklia within the constitution, giving itself the right to establish a special economic and legal zone. So we are actually drafting now with international and local legal group firms a concept paper which would basically establish the governance of this zone, along with the government, obviously. So we want to create a zone where, one of the, let's say, ideas that we're looking at is establishing a zone which would be governed by English law, for example, and English arbitration would be possible there with the international arbitration with UK courts. But so these are a number of ideas that we're pursuing, in pursuing the ultimate goal of again creating a hub that can include all the best practices from around the world and create a zone that can serve the regional players, because we're not going to probably tap into the entire world, but definitely connecting Asia and Europe. Georgia definitely is the gateway, and we'll, I think, with our efforts, within the next, say, 3 to 4 years, we can establish Anaklia as in the first steps of Anaklia of being that connector of Asia and Europe and a gateway of Asia and Europe.
Thank you. So on this topic of connections, you have these two, I wouldn't say distinct, I mean they're mutually beneficial components of the special economic zone and your deep sea port. What do you see as being the primary connections between these two bits, and how will they fit together?
I think, they are complementary, definitely. They're complementary projects. Of course, they are united by trade, so that's the umbrella of everything. So the driver, whether it's cargo, whether it's logistics, or whether it's value-added or manufacturing, all of this then ends up being part of trade. trade between different geographic, let's say, areas. And definitely, again, as a connector, as a gateway, Georgia wants to be the platform for, say, Asian companies trading or potentially having the opportunity to trade with the EU, and then even European and Western companies, wanting to establish their base and do business in this region. We want to create, let's say, a corridor in both for both directions. And I think. Again, Anaklia, not Anaklia, but Georgia, why it's unique in this case and why we think it can be successful is due to our free trade agreements. What we are trying to tap into is Georgia's, let's say, Georgia being able to give any international company or any company, local or international, the ability to trade with and sell their goods in a wider let's say, consumer markets. And we have a free trade agreement, a deeply comprehensive free trade agreement with the European Union. We have a free trade agreement with China, including Hong Kong. We have a free trade agreement with Turkey, all the CIS countries. So basically, we are a small country, obviously, on the size-wise, but our, let's say, trade potential and consumer, let's say, outreach, the consumer market outreach can be quite large. So anything produced here can easily be, let's say, exported to these countries. And as you probably also know, through different reforms in the last, say, 10 to 15 years, Georgia has achieved, let's say, the status of a country that is ranked among the top 10, I think number 8 in the world by ease of doing business. So, and this is very true. We have a very non-bureaucratic system. Whether it's we have one of the most developed financial sectors not only in the region, but I think not in the local region, but in the wider region. I would say even cover Europe. So. These are all beneficial to Georgia, again, playing a role as a connector of trade. And Anaklia and special economic zone behind it, and the city behind it, are just the vehicles. We want to create that platform, and then that will be the, let's say, the mutual benefit between these projects.
And if I can drill down a little bit more into the port specifically, what latest design and technological features are you incorporating into this port?
Of course, we want to follow the most modern, let's say, technologies that they are, and at the same time, we have to take into account what is commercially, let's say, most viable. I mean, of course, there are some let's say, ports and terminals around the world that are fully automated, and they see in that specific location or area. Due to different objective reasons, I guess, and subjective reasons, they prefer to have full automation. We believe that we want to, at this particular moment, due to Georgia's, let's say, cheap labor and cheap energy, we want to kind of balance that. So we are not going with the fully automated, for example, terminals, but we are going to go with semi-automated terminals, which is a bit more labor intensive, but at the same time we feel that this is very important for Georgia right now, and for Anaklia for that matter, to have definitely that beneficial social impact and developmental impact. So that's one, let's say, choice we have made. And again, there's a cost-benefit analysis and cost-benefit to all of the modern technologies. But
and if I can, excuse me, just cut you off at that point. I mean, when we looked around, something that was incredibly impressive was your corporate social responsibility in the way that you have been engaging the community in your efforts. But at the same time, foreign partners, Conti International, the US, China are important to what you do. How are you balancing your priorities to Georgian locals and to the community of Anaklia? So how are you working with them, but also these foreign partners?
It's a mix, it's a balance. But obviously we are prioritizing the locals, the Georgians, the Anaklia, the residents. Again, we are one of the main reasons why we are pursuing also, apart from what I've stated already, why we are pursuing this project is actually to make a difference, to change the status quo, to make a really positive impact. And I think this project has a magnitude to make a significant impact. Like, of course, many projects can make a positive impact. But I think a project of this scale, I mean, we're talking about more than, or for phase one, we're talking more than $600 million of investment, and for all 9 phases, we're talking about $2.5 billion of investment, and job creation of starting with about 2,000 jobs to all the way up to 20,000 jobs. So again, these are all the impacts that we are taking into account. But Georgia cannot do it alone. That's out of the question. We are not at the development stage as a country to be able to pull off a project of this complexity and of this let's say nature. So obviously we need expertise from our foreign partners like Conti, like we've had very good collaboration with other European and US companies like Moffett Nichol, Berger Abam, Van Oord, and a number of Royal Haskoning. So there have been a number of, let's say, top names, MTVS, from top names that we have, let's say, tapped into to provide expertise in different fields, whether it's environmental, whether it's market, whether it's commercial or otherwise. So it's important. It has to be a balance, and everybody has to participate, the locals and our foreign partners.
And of course, Anaklia provides the much needed additional shipping capacity that Georgia needs. But at the same time, when you've received, I believe your first ship is meant to be received in 2021.
We hope actually end of 2020.
I mean, even better, 2020. Do you see there being a lag, though, between when you receive this first ship and when you reach a capacity which is economically and financially viable?
There is always a ramp-up period that every project has, regardless of its nature. And yes, of course, Anaklia Port and this economic zone, both of them will have a certain ramp-up period. We foresee it in it being anywhere from 2 to 4 to maybe 5 years. So that, I mean, ports are long-term projects; they are not short-term projects. So we are in it for a long term, and for a long term, I mean, in that regard, ramp-up can take anywhere between 2 to 5 years. So yeah, no, of course there is a lag before we reach full capacity, and there is a plan also in terms of expanding even further. So within the forecast that we have, for example, for traffic in the coming years after operations, basically concludes at least today, from today's viewpoint, concludes that in somewhere between 2027, 2030, we'll need to start phase 2, because we won't be able to service the capacity that we will create within phase 1. So, yeah.
And of course, you've been seeking both equity and debt investors for the project. How are you balancing the priorities that you need to make this project a success, and also those of those people contributing financially?
Again, you are absolutely right. This is not only a Georgian project. We have many international, let's say, partners and institutions that are going to be funding this project, going to be participating, bringing added value. So, the most important, obviously, in any success is the alignment of interest between the parties, and that I think our group, Tbilisi, who's been on the Georgian market ever since the fall of the Soviet Union, and since we started our first group company was established in 1992. We've attracted more than I think $3 billion of investments to Georgia over the last 27 years or so, and 26 years. And one of the key successes for us was actually having a diversified shareholding structure with our international partners and being involved. And obviously, the main point is aligning interests, making sure that it's a win-win for everyone. Sometimes it takes, it goes as planned. Sometimes it takes longer, but ultimately, the main goal is to have a partnership and a group of let's say, shareholders and individuals, institutions that can see eye to eye and set, let's say, common goals, and at the end be successful. The project yielding success and returns to all of them. So that's the key.
And the Belt and Road Initiative is something which you have personally discussed and is important to Georgia in general. How are you involving Chinese companies in Anaklia?
We are collaborating with the Chinese companies on different, let's say, fields. One is construction, obviously, because they've gained a lot of high-level experience in construction, whether it's marine construction or terminal construction. One of the key, let's say, directions that we are pursuing is also a procurement of cranes and equipment for the port, which we also see as China being one of the, let's say, favorite candidates for supply of such equipment. And also we continue talking with one of the co-lenders. So we have 4 big international financial institutions that are funding this project, and I can name all 4 of them. It's the European Bank of Reconstruction, the Asian Development Bank, OPIC, Overseas Private Investment Corporation from the United States, and one, the 4th one is actually Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, which is actually China-based, China-initiated bank, international bank. So all of these 4 companies, including the Chinese, are part of the, let's say, the group of lenders that are considering this project, and other potential, project partners are envisaged to come and join this project later, especially in the special economic zone. I think there's a lot of potential there, and we are talking with, I can't name the names at this stage, but there are definitely large Chinese industrial companies that we are talking with, both in tech, both in trade and logistics, and to again create a team that can bring the most added value to that specific goal for that specific project, and which ultimately determines the success of it.
And Anaklia has ambitions, along with Georgia, to be a primary transport corridor in the Silk Road economic belt. But with the electrification of the train lines in Iran, with the upgrading of the lines in Turkey, as well as the construction of the Kars to Tbilisi line, do you think Anaklia can viably function as this primary node?
The Belt and Road Initiative has different corridors that it's tapping into. So to say that we can be a primary, let's say, node as Anaklia, it's a bit would be an overstatement. I think what we need to focus on is making Anaklia, let's say, one of the, let's say, most reliable alternatives within the Belt and Road, and I think that goal can be definitely achieved by us. The project and the initiative with the Chinese government has come up, and I think the regional players here have really caught on and made significant investments, as you will see along your trip. I think it creates an opportunity that should definitely be big enough for all of the players, and I don't think any one player can play an ultimate role in this. Everybody will benefit, and Anaklia, I believe one thing that Georgia and the management that Georgia as a country has created in the region, and the practices, the best practices that our group has incorporated in previous projects, and what we are incorporating this Anaklia project, both in the port and the SEZ, will be an exemplary, let's say, governance and management structures that will be exemplary in terms of transparency, in terms of efficiency, in terms of reliability. So those are the key aspects that have made Georgia the success story, and that's what we are going to definitely emphasize on going forward. And we believe that we can compete due to these factors. We can definitely compete with any alternative corridor or an infrastructure or a port, and have that, let's say, an established market share on the Belt and Road Initiative. And every other player, I'm sure, will get some certain share of that market, including Anaklia.
And if you were going to name one particular challenge, what is your greatest challenge in the next 5 years?
This is a greenfield port. This is a very new initiative, and of course, this is a very complex project. So bringing it to fruition is a challenge. It's something that we are tackling on every hour basis. So that is definitely a challenge. Bringing such a big project, such a complex project to fruition is definitely a challenge. And I think everything else, we don't have any major roadblocks that we see, for at least from today's perspective, that can really hamper the project. There's no, the market's commercial, let's say, viability is there. The environmentally, we are sound, and the social impact and environmental impact is manageable. And and the resources are there, the partners are there, the consortium is in place. So, and I think the government is also very motivated to get this project really done as fast as possible. So I think all of the components are there. I think the only challenge remains now is to get our hands dirty and, let's say, put this this project to fruition as planned and receive those first vessels in 2020.
And I have no doubt you will. And as you've probably been aware, our project is about the Belt and Road as an overarching structure. And if we could ask just one last question.
Sure.
If you were going to summarise the Belt and Road in one word, what is that to you?
That's, I think, probably the most difficult question you've asked. Now, in one word, I don't know. It's really difficult in one word, but what I can say, it's definitely a great initiative. It's definitely a vision. Let's say, if you want one word, it's definitely a vision. And I think about, if I can say, in 2013 or 14 when I joined this project, at that time, it was really a theory. And it was really a theoretical vision. And until since then, I think today we can no longer call it a theoretical vision. I think this is something that is becoming a reality. And I don't know, I'm just going to go a bit more in detail. It's, for example, last year, for the forwarders and freight forwarders, basically placing orders for their customers along the Trans-Siberian route, that is one of the Belt and Road, let's say, corridors, could not give them a fixed rate for more than 3 months. So that the window, it actually started with 1 month, and last year was 3 months. This year in January, the first 12-month contract was signed, basically fixing rates. This is very important because basically this gives the customers the ability to plan ahead and actually know what it would cost them to transport something, not in 3 months, but in a year's time or in 6 months' time. And this is, for predictability and reliability reasons, this is very important and a very good achievement from different, let's say, angles. So I think the sheer fact that last year alone, about 300,000 containers have moved, TEUs have moved through the Belt and Road, different Belt and Road corridors, is definitely a great sign. So it's a vision that is coming to becoming a reality. So and if we hope that it will continue this way. And I think the biggest challenge for us, for the Belt and Road especially, will be to establish the Belt and Road and this vision no longer to be a vision, but as something a viable alternative for trade and for moving goods and for connecting China and Europe and Asia and Europe and the West. So that is the ultimate goal, I think, and we hope that in the coming future that can be achievable.